Hi there, my name is Catherine. I'm a business English teacher and I focus on English language for the workplace. Now, I am sure you are very familiar with this upside down triangle. Adverbs of frequency. We all learn it. We all learn the order. Even native English speakers learn this at school. We learn the order in which these words go. If you rarely do something, it means maybe once a year. If you usually do something, it means maybe every week or every day. But the thing is, there are so many more expressions to show the frequency of which you do something, or even how infrequently you do something. So in today's video, I want to go through some alternative adverbs of frequency you can use and one adverb of frequency that is almost never used by native English speakers, even though everyone is taught that we use it often. I wonder if you can guess which one it is. Before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe if you have not already. I have lots of helpful videos for intermediate to advanced level students, so if that is where you are on your English language learning journey, definitely subscribe because I put out 2 to 3 videos a week and I'm sure it will be very helpful for you. Now, you may notice as we go through this video, some of these adverbs of frequency are repeated. And there is a reason for that. I haven't just written this script and repeatedly written the same word over and over again. There is a reason for this, and I will explain at the end of this video. So keep watching and it will make sense by the end of it. Our first one, always. So we know that always means 100%. We always do something. Some other options you could use are consistently, perpetually. I consistently forget my homework. I perpetually forget my homework. Invariably. Now, of course, this is the opposite to variably, which means it can change. It changes often. The train is invariably packed during rush hour. Whenever I travel, I invariably forget to pack my toothbrush. It never changes. I always forget. Constantly and continually, we use these in the same way. I constantly check my phone. I continually check my phone. Eternally. Now, this one's a bit exaggerated. You wouldn't really hear this in everyday English, but you could say, I eternally forget my phone. Or my boss is eternally on my back. He is always asking me to check in with him. Usually. Now, as we know, usually means you don't do it always, but it is something that you do on a regular basis. Maybe 6 out of 7 days you do it. Other words we could use are ordinarily, generally, typically, commonly, regularly, routinely, traditionally. Now, all of them are used in a very similar way. I generally go to the gym after work. I typically go to the gym after work. I regularly go to the gym after work. I traditionally go to the gym after work. Routinely go to the gym after work. Now, the only one that is a bit different is habitually. Habitually comes from the word habit. So although you're using it in the same way, I habitually go to the gym after work, what we mean is it's a habit for you. So it's a bit more than something you choose to do. It's actually something that is a habit for you. Frequently. Instead of frequently, you could try repeatedly, recurringly, oftentimes. I oftentimes forget to check in with my sister, and then she calls me on the weekend wondering why I haven't messaged her that week. Time after time. My boss doesn't trust that I will finish my work on time. He calls me time after time after time. And as you can feel from the repeated time after time after time, it's frequent. It's an ongoing thing that happens once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. And finally, over and over. I'm really tired with my children. I have to ask them to do something over and over and over again. The only difference here is time after time and over potentially have a negative connotation. You could say he surprises me time after time, or he surprises me over and over. And of course, that's positive. But for the most part, we use these in a negative way. It's when something's repeated or irritatingly often. But of course, you could say, I watch your videos over and over, meaning I watch them frequently. Often. Now, I think you know, often is you do it maybe 3 days out of the week, or you go twice a year. It's something you do regularly. So, of course, our first synonym for often is regularly. Daily. We could also use hourly, weekly, monthly. I go to the gym daily. I contact my parents weekly. My boss calls me hourly. Generally. And last one, time and again. I visit the doctor time and again. Or my teacher really needs my homework. She keeps calling me time and again. It's not used as commonly, but it means the same. It's like a repeated action. I have told you time and again to meet the deadline, but you are still late. Meaning I have told you often. Sometimes. Instead of sometimes, we could use occasionally, periodically. A period of time, so periodically. At times I go to the cinema. At times I feel angry with my friends. I watch scary movies at times. Sporadically. Now, sporadically means there's no set pattern. So it's the same as sometimes, that it sometimes happens, maybe once a month, but there's no set pattern. Maybe the first month it's 2 times that month. The second month it's 1 time. The third month it doesn't happen at all. So for example, I have one student who is 11 hours behind me, so we can't always find time to have a lesson. Meaning our lessons are as and when we find time. So I could say that that student studies sporadically. It's not the same time every week. Some weeks it's 3 times, some weeks it's none. It's sporadic. Every now and then. Oh yes, I drink coffee every now and then. Seldom. Now, I want to talk about seldom because I know that non-native English speakers use it often and they are taught that we use it all the time, and it is in that adverb of frequency table. I even remember learning it at school, but it is seldom used by native speakers in daily conversation or natural conversation. Maybe if they are writing an article, creative text, giving a presentation, trying to emphasize something, sure, they might use the word seldom. But in daily conversation, whether it's formal, informal, polite, impolite, it doesn't matter. We don't use seldom. In my family, we all have a very good range of vocabulary and we're all quite intelligent people, and I don't think I've ever heard my mum or my dad or my brother ever use seldom. We are much more likely to explain why we don't often do something. So for example, if you said to me, how often do you travel abroad? And I want to say seldom. What I'm more likely to say as a native English speaker is, I never really have the opportunity anymore, or I just do not have the time. I would love to travel abroad, but I cannot find the time in my schedule. I used to go every single month, but now I'm finding it difficult to find the time, the money, and the energy to go abroad. We're much more likely to explain why we don't do something. Because, for example, if I said to you, how often do you speak English? And you said seldom. It's kind of like a conversation ender, okay? And why seldom? You know, we're much more likely to give information. How often do you speak English? Not really that often. I would love to speak more often. I would love to speak every day, but I don't get the opportunity. Other things you can say are hardly ever. This is quite casual. I hardly ever go abroad. I hardly ever speak English. Once in a blue moon. I'm not sure if this is an idiom or a quote. I feel like it could be a quote. Maybe someone, a scientist, astrologist said it in the past. So the blue moon, of course the moon is white. So seeing a blue moon would be very rare. So therefore, once every time you see a blue moon means I don't often do it because I hardly ever see a blue moon. So I hardly ever do this thing you're asking me about. Similar to if you've heard when pigs fly, when are you going to speak English fluently? Or when pigs fly, pigs don't fly. So it's almost saying, oh, I'm never going to do that. This is similar. I don't think I'm ever going to see a blue moon, so I don't think I'm ever going to do this thing or hardly ever do this thing. Irregularly speaks for itself. You do something irregularly. Now and then. It's the same sometimes, but not really often. Now and then. I speak English now and then. I go on holiday now and then. And last one, infrequently. I do that infrequently. Rarely. Now, it was difficult for me to find a synonym for rarely because, to be honest, we use rarely and never in almost the same way as native English speakers, I mean. So I know that never means I've never done that. Like 0% chance that I've done that. Have you ever eaten sushi in Japan? No, I've never been to Japan. It's never happened. But actually, native English speakers will use never to describe rarely doing something as well, but it depends on the rest of the sentence and the context. So, for example, if I say, oh, I never get to go swimming, that doesn't mean I've never been swimming. It means I like to swim. I have been swimming, but now I never get the time to go or the opportunity to go. So I rarely go swimming. Unless someone says I have never been or I have never done, then they could be using it as a synonym for rarely. How often do you speak English? Oh, I never speak English these days. There's no one around me to speak to. Of course, the understanding is you can speak English and you used to speak English, but now you never get the opportunity. Of course, if I say I've never spoken English in my life, it means I can't speak English. I've never spoken it. Let's use the Japan example as well, just to make this clearer. Have you ever been to Japan? No, I have never. Meaning, no, 0%. How often do you go to Japan? Or have you ever been to Japan? I never get the chance to go anymore, but I miss going. You can understand from the context that I have been before, but I never get to go now. And the next way we might say rarely is occasionally, which I know is a contrast to that upside down triangle because occasionally is higher up in the triangle, higher percentage, but we would follow it up again with the rest of the sentence and how infrequently we do something. How often do you call your best friend who lives in another country? Oh, not often at all. Occasionally we speak on the phone, but I wish it could be more. Maybe once a year. So again, I've used not often, occasionally, but I've used it in a sentence that tells you that it rarely happens. It really rarely happens. Or how often do you drink coffee? Yeah, occasionally. It's not my favorite drink, but occasionally I drink it. Again, you can understand that it's not something I do often. I don't like the taste. It's a less frequent action. So that leaves me with the last one, which of course is never. And as I mentioned about rarely, if you say no, I have never done, or no, I have never been somewhere or something, then of course it means 0%. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of these are the same or can be used in different categories. And the reason is, even though we are taught, both non-native and native speakers, that an adverb of frequency demonstrates how often you do something, a different amount of time or amount of energy or percentage that we are doing that thing with. The reality is, in daily conversation, in natural, fluent conversation, whether it be casual, formal, informal, professional, we want to know if you do something often or not. We don't really care how often that thing is, just if you do it often or not. We don't care if you do it once a month, once a week, once a year. The understanding is either you have done it and have that experience, or you don't. For example, if I ask you, have you ever been skiing? And you say, I regularly go skiing. My understanding is it's something you do often. You know how to ski. Maybe you have ski equipment. And if I want to go skiing, I should ask you for advice. If I ask, have you ever been skiing? And you say, yes, I go often. Same understanding. You can ski. Maybe you have the equipment. And if I want to go skiing, I should ask you for advice. If I ask, have you ever been skiing? And you say, oh, I used to go regularly, but not so much anymore. I don't find the time. The understanding is still you are good at skiing, maybe you own the equipment, and if I want to go skiing, I should ask you for advice, but you do not go anymore. The only reason I would need to know if you went 10 times a year, 6 times a year, 3 times a day is if I want to compete with you and beat you. So you say I go 6 times a year and I can say, oh, I go 7. It's the only reason I would need to know the actual amount of time you go. Let's think of this in a professional setting. If an interviewer asks you, how often do you use AI in your daily work? And you say occasionally, regularly, often, sometimes, the actual word you use does not matter. It's the rest of the sentence. Oh, I occasionally use it. I'm very familiar with it. Or I regularly use it and I'm currently studying how to use it so I can be better. I sometimes use it, but I'm quite good at it. It doesn't matter how much you use something. It's the rest of the sentence that is important. So note down any of those adverbs of frequency that you haven't been using and try and use them more often in your vocabulary. That will expand your vocabulary. And if you are trying to do the IELTS test or you just want to sound more professional at work, having more options will be very beneficial to you. I hope this video was helpful and not too confusing. I know it's the opposite of what a lot of teachers have probably told you in the past, but the type of English I'm teaching is for people that are using English every day, not people that want to pass an exam and show that they are the best at understanding grammar, but people that want to use it every day to be understood by other non-native speakers and native speakers alike. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.